A lot of the comics I've done recently haven't exactly been stellar, have they? Something that I can say about these early Sonic comics is at least they're easy to talk about. I poke fun at them all the time, but as I pointed out in the past, there are some that are fun to read, despite a lot of the stories falling into the traps of 90s kids comics. And when it comes to the early Sonic comics, I can at least say that even when the stories do fail, they're usually at least goofy in the ways that they fail, compared to the Dreamwave Mega Man comic we've been looking at, which is mostly just boring and stupid. And boring. And redundant. And boring. That being said, Sonic issue 12, everybody. It's so good to see the goofiness again. The cover is bright and colorful, but that's about it. We have a speed piano pun that I'm pretty sure Bugs Bunny had already done. We open to our first story, A Timely Arrival. No points for guessing what the main plot component of this story is, and we open with Sonic dumping wheelbarrows full of old robot parts that he's trashed, while Robotnik jumps up and down and tells us exactly what's happening in the panel. After repeatedly saying the word time, Robotnik apparently hatches a new evil plan and laughs maniacally about it while Sonic speeds off, noting that Robotnik may have finally lost his mind. Back in Knothole, Sonic and Tails find Sally watching a soap opera on their plot convenience monitor, which once again leads me to question who the heck is creating and broadcasting these programs in a world where a totalitarian dictator has full sway over the entire world, save for a few very small pockets of resistance. Sally quickly switches over to the news, where a SWAT bot is on hand to lay out the fact that Robotnik has a giant chainsaw machine poised to destroy the entire forest. After witnessing a demonstration, Sonic launches himself right through the earth and dashes off to stop Robotnik. Sonic arrives right after Robotnik's finished clearing a large section of the forest, and rather than launching himself straight at Robotnik while he's vulnerable, he just stands there and gives Robotnik a perfect opportunity to hit him with a laser from the side of the chainsaw. And what is this laser? Why, it's a time machine, of course! Sonic launches through the time stream back to 7800 BC. Sonic, dazed as he lands in this strange new time, is quite unsure of what just happened. Where am I? Who turned out the lights? What time is it? And then a pterodon, or pterodactyl, the editor's note tells us that either one is acceptable, just swoops in and pulls Sonic into the air. And then it starts talking. To answer your question, 1. You're in prehistoric Mobius. 2. I turned out the lights. And 3. It's dinner time! Who knew dinosaurs were so chatty? Or that they knew their present was Sonic's prehistory? Sonic's not interested in being someone else's lunch, so he performs a Sonic spin to get the pterodon to let go, only to fall straight into the jaws of a waiting Tyrannosaurus. Despite the tension of the moment, Sonic just buzzsaws through the creature's teeth and lands safely on the ground, where he runs into his ancestor, Sonug the Bog Hog. I got nothing for that one. What am I supposed to say about something that was done in the Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, and Power Rangers? So anyway, the two hedgehogs dash off and we cut to Robotnik, oh my god, you have to be kidding me, who is arming a catapult to try and crush the two of them, and is talking to himself. This will be more fun when I get to invent robots in 40,000 years. How meta? He launches the catapult and apparently crushes the two hedgehogs, even dancing a jig of joy. And we cut back to the present where Robotnik is dancing the same jig. He's just about to cut the ribbon on the display of his time machine when suddenly all the freedom fighters are leading a charge against Robotnik to try and get the time machine and save Sonic. And Robotnik can't do anything because his mother told him never to run with scissors. Been a while, but we finally have another funny joke, everybody. So since the other freedom fighters were actually doing something, the obvious thing to do is immediately cut back to the past, where it's revealed that Sonic and Sonug survived the rock falling on them because they burrowed down into a hidden tunnel before it struck them. Sonic's introduced to all the prehistoric freedom fighters who don't even get their own punny Ugg names. When Sonic mentions getting takeout to replace the rotten eggs they've been eating, they all freak out, misconstruing his words as being about walking outside. Turns out Sonug and his friends don't go outside. It's scary out there. I'm right there with you, brother. But Sonic thinks to himself that this can't be right. If they don't go outside, then he'd evolve into a mole rather than a hedgehog. This is stupid for several reasons, the least of which being that there would be a very long time between now and then. He can't possibly know how the timeline would have progressed had he not interfered. But interfere he does, apparently correcting a timeline that we didn't know needed to be corrected. And how does he manage to convince them all to go outside? He pulls them all outside and convinces them to become landscapers. Seriously, that's it. He tells them to start digging up bushes and replanting them near their cave in neat little rows and lines. And thus, the Great Forest was born. I'm not kidding. And then Sonic is drawn back into the future by the present-day freedom fighters who, off-screen, trounced Robotnik, got the time machine, and figured out how to use it to drag Sonic back from the past. I don't know about you, but I'd rather see that scene than watch Sonic invent Arbor Day. And we end with the past freedom fighters going on with their new, hippie lifestyle. Let's jump straight to the second story, The Bold-Headed Eagle. And we start with Sonic blatantly running off the edge of a cliff like a dumbass. It's not like he even tried to stop himself and just had too much momentum. He's still freaking running even as he falls off the side. Sonic tries to stop himself from falling, but is unable to, and crashes down into a small nest made by Cyril, an old, bald eagle. He explains that he's the last eagle on Mobius, and that he used to lead a large flock of eagles, which is stupid because eagles don't fly in flocks, they're usually solitary birds, but that all of them were captured by Robotnik years ago, and the only reason he's still around is because he hid in the mountains like a coward. But we cut straight away from that scene to Robotnik and Snively in their evil lair, where there's a blip on a radar. Apparently it picks up organic life or something? I don't know, but it somehow tells Robotnik that there are non-robotics in the mountains, and he orders the Rambot to be deployed. Cut back to Sonic and Cyril, where Sonic's attempting to get the bird to start flying again, and that just because he's old doesn't mean he should give up on life. Sonic, I'm pretty sure it's more because his family was captured and most likely turned into robots that he's rather bummed out. Cyril goes ahead and gives flying a try, but falls like a stone, managing to land himself on a nearby tree branch. And then... oh, really? It turns out that several members of his old flock had managed to avoid detection by hiding in the mountains too, and really? You're telling me that a group of eagles were literally just living a few levels down from him on the same mountain, and that in all this time neither noticed the other's presence, and that Robotnik's radar apparently didn't pick any of them up in this whole time, but just happened to pick them up now? Really? 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 While Sonic broods over potentially having sent another living being to their death, Robotnik shows up with the Rambot, and both he and Snively are wearing lederhosen for reasons. Robotnik activates the ram, and knocks Sonic off the edge of a cliff, where he is quickly saved by Cyril, now full of vim and vigor again all of a sudden, and is flying just fine. As they fly off, the cliff behind Robotnik and Snively breaks off, sending them both tumbling downwards. Don't worry folks, they'll just land somewhere in the next issue. And so the story ends with Cyril flying off towards Knothole so he can drop Sonic off. But once again, we're not done yet. Yep, it's another issue that tries to pull in a third story instead of just trying to expand upon the two it already had. So we enter our third story, The Lynx is a Jinx. We open on Sonic doing hero-y things by saving two animals from patrolling SWAT bots. After seeing them to safety, he meets up with the others who are hunting down more animals that need saving. Sally points out that her detector, not a specific kind of detector, just a detector, has detected something up in a tree, and Rotor notes that despite the oncoming robots, whoever is in the tree is refusing to come down. Sonic speeds up the tree to see what's going on and finds a lynx sitting up there. He introduces himself as Larry Lynx, the Super Jinx, and explains that he's not bothering to run away because bad luck seems to follow him wherever he goes. This is soon demonstrated when the tree branch they are sitting on unceremoniously snaps off and falls to the ground, squishing the other freedom fighters. While in the past this sort of thing would have been played off for comedic effect, here it has caused several catastrophic injuries among the other freedom fighters, including breaking Sally's leg and Antoine's arm, throwing out Rotor's back, and messing up Tails', tails. And immediately, I mean freaking immediately, Sally states that they have to get rid of Larry because, since he's a jinx, he's too much of a security risk, and they should leave him behind. Man, this is even worse than the whole cactus bird incident. Sally is perfectly willing to throw another sentient being to the wolves merely because he says he's a jinx and a tree branch fell on her. At least with the cactus bird, we were given something of a reason for her to be wary, what with them having bad luck with animals in the past. That doesn't exactly make it right, how callous she reacted to the creature, but this is even worse. Again, this is a very early version of Princess Sally before she became the de facto brains of the operation for real, but even ignoring what a character will become, there's no excuse for this sort of behavior. Even if she isn't as logical as her future self, you're just going to take him at his word that he believes he's a jinx? No arguments? No, it's just a coincidence speech? Nope, she just leaves him behind, and no one tries to challenge her on this. Sally, you're a bitch. Well, okay, Sonic makes a half-hearted attempt at trying to argue with her, but Larry just shrugs it off and says don't bother. We get a few panels of more bad luck, and Sonic says it might be bad luck, but all he needs is some good luck to counter bad luck, and oh my god, this is actually really boring. But just when the boredom starts to settle in, we cut to all the other freedom fighters having been captured by SWAT bots. Off screen, of course. Sonic, rather than go in and be a hero, just tells Larry to walk towards Robotnik, putting his faith in the idea that Larry's bad luck would affect his enemies just as much as his friends. And of course, it turns out, he is a freaking jinx. He does project bad luck, and it does affect Robotnik just as much as Sonic. And so, over the next few pages, he pulls a YouTube by defeating all of his enemies by doing absolutely nothing. And so, Sonic and friends return to Knothole, where they suddenly prove that Larry's bad luck streak is over by having him win 50 games of chess in a row against Rotor. The end. I know I'm getting really redundant at this point, but this was just not a very good issue at all. Unfortunately, it isn't even an interesting kind of bad either. There's really not a whole lot I can talk about. The first story was a time travel plot in a kid's comic, so not only did it amount to jack squat and have the more interesting scenes happen off camera, but it was pretty much doomed from the start. Even in adult works, time travel is one of the absolute hardest plot devices to work with, so there was no way this one was going to work. The second story not only has one of the most frustrating examples of lazy writing I have ever seen in the medium, intended age of the readership be damned, but also doesn't really seem to know what sort of story it wants to tell in relation to Cyril. Is he depressed because he's old? Does his age really matter? Why hadn't he been able to fly for so long if he could fly just fine after finding his flock? Does it really matter? No, it doesn't. All things considered, the third story is the one with the most substance, which is a bit of a problem considering it's one of the two shorter stories in the issue. But really, the only big things about it are the huge leaps of logic taken around Larry's supposed bad luck, including Sally's callous bitch behavior and Sonic's gambit on sending Larry into Robotnik's clutches. Larry himself would become a minor character down the line for a brief stint, and would later come back as a major character in one of my personal favorite arcs in the Sonic Universe comics, but as I've said before, I can't give any leeway to the comic for things that would happen in the future. So, yeah, this issue was bad and boring. Seems like something I'm saying a lot in these reviews. But it can't go on forever. I swear, there is a reason I started reviewing these comics. I just wish I could remember what it was. But next up isn't going to be my savior. No. Next up, it's issue 3 of Dreamwave Mega Man.
Oh my god, what am I doing with my life?